What is leadership, Leanne? We want a definition of what leadership is. Because I was thinking upstairs before you came down, I was like, I don't even know how I would define it. I know generally, but not,
Yeah, well, my favourite saying, I've got a lot of favourite sayings, been around a while. My favourite saying is a great leader is someone who inspires willing action. And the follow on from that is a leadership is not about who's got the most followers or who's got the most people or the biggest car. It's a true leader is someone, how many leaders they develop. So it's actually someone that works behind the scenes and creates the environment and recognises, they talk about coaches and mentors. It's a combination of someone on a cheer squad that's saying you can do it even if you miss that shot, someone who's a coach who understands and sees your skills and believes in you and understands with a bit of tweaking, you could do this really well.
Do you think, like, when you talk about a good leader as someone who develops more leaders in a workplace, there might be a resistance to kind of do that, because if you impart enough of your knowledge and skills on someone working beneath you, that they'll eventually just come up and maybe overtake or leave?
Yeah, but that's a perfect –
like,
I'm cutting in on that just because my wife said that the other day. She's like I think she was in this Harvard business class thing she did, and it was the same thing, but it was like, wouldn't you rather take the risk on them staying? You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm like. Yeah. I agree, but do you think the mentality is that that instead of developing a leader to become like you, that maybe a lot of business owners and leaders out there tend to just keep everyone down a peg or two just so they can sort of remain the top dog?
There's a lot of really great leaders, and how they're good leaders is because they're not standing out the front taking the glory. So they're the quiet ones. It's like the press. The press works really well because it reports negative news because that appeals to our primal instinct, a primitive reptilian brain. That's the one that's always looking out for things that could go wrong. And whether somebody's a narcissist or whether somebody's a really poor leader or someone doesn't want to help someone, the analogy we use, or one that I've been using for decades, is in North and Northwest Queensland and Australia, we have this amazing lizard. It's called a frilly or frill-neck lizard. And we just love, and I've used it for decades, is because everybody gives you all this great science about how you should be a leader, all these great training courses and what you should do. But it's all based on fear. And so a frilly, the bit I like about a frilly is it's unique. Throughout the world, most people know what a frilly-neck lizard is. It's got this big frill around the outside and it's got some teeth, but in actual fact its primary cause of defence is first it bluffs, and so it lives in a tree and it's got this little scrawny lizard and 3/4 of its length is a tail and it's quite brightly coloured and it's camouflaged, and what it does is it sits in the tree so it can notice in a long way off it's paranoid in relation to everything's going to be scary or eat me, so it sees things off and watches from the tree. And it's very clever too because its first line of defence is hide. And so then what it does is it will keep something between it and you, or the thing it perceives as a threat. So if you've ever seen a frilly in real life, if you see it in a tree, you'll walk around the tree and it actually keeps moving, so it keeps something in front of you so that you can't see it. So it uses camouflage.
A bit of a blocker, like NFL.
It's a bit of a keep me out of the way. So I'll bring it back to the human content in a minute, but if you can just follow the story. So its defence, first of all, is camouflage or hide. If it's caught down on the ground, it only hunts at night, so it narrows its chances. And, of course, most people have seen the frilly in the bright red sand of the Central Australia, but it actually does live in the northern parts, so it can be green or brown. And what happens is when it's caught in the open, it's got teeth, but its next defence is it perceives something's a threat, and immediately, most people have seen it, it will actually make sure it looks bigger. So it uses bluff. So immediately brings the frill up. It's got a brightly coloured mouth. It'll actually hiss and it's really brazen. It actually steps towards you and hopefully can get you to back off, and then it'll just keep following you. But if you stand your ground, the bluff hasn't worked. So then I don't know if you've ever seen, but I hope anybody who hears this story just goes onto YouTube or something, has a look. Its next defence is run. And it runs to the nearest tree, and it's the most comical run. It's one of the few lizards that runs on its back legs, and it runs super fast. And then what it'll do is it'll go for higher ground so it can then watch the danger. So it's all based on fear. So poor leadership, or the analogy I normally use is if you're feeling fearful, have you still got your primal brain thinking actually controlling your reactions? That lizard brain that actually controls is protecting you. There's no longer a saber-toothed tiger, but you've got lots of other fears that are still there, and it's understanding that you might be behaving like a lizard, or a leader could be. And so the example is somebody who's fearful. Let's use a person, not a leader in this particular case, but somebody who's a bit fearful and a bit scared of people or their reputation or whatever it is. What they'll do is they'll watch people off in the distance, perceiving they're actually a threat. So they might put their diary, or they might put, book an appointment with me, make an appointment, come and see me. Or, look, I haven't got time to see you now. Look, I'll see you later on. And they'll use appointments. Or they'll say, no, speak to that person, don't speak to me, and I'll make time if it's okay for me to see you. Now, that's transferable to leaders too, because they're fearful. So then they use the bluff. If that doesn't work, and then they're caught somewhere in the open in office and someone wants to talk to them and they're a bit fearful, or in the case you used an individual, but I'll use leaders. And then what they'll do is they'll do the bluff. Now, the bluff can come in lots of ways. If someone's questioning their authority, or if somebody is feeling threatened, what they'll do is and are really skilled. They come by other names, by the way. In the real world, they're called bullies or controllers or manipulators or a narcissist. What they'll do, and if they're really skilled, they can do this sitting down. They actually start to puff their chest out, and then they put their frill up with their hands on their hips, and they get louder and they get more animated in their voice, and their mouth opens really loud. Can you see the analogy? And they bluff to get you to back down. And then if that doesn't work, then they'll run off to their office and they'll seek higher authority, or they'll use a pack mentality to get people together to isolate that person, to control them. So that's not quite the answer you were looking for, but I think that poor leadership comes, whether it's survival mechanism, because if you're someone who's timid, you can use all of those things and you're really nervous, and they're pinpricks of anxiety because you're always feeling threatened, so you're oversensitive. It's your primal brain that's driving that fear. And neuroscience has proven that. And that changes the chemicals in your brain, and you have that continually going through your body for years and years and years, and you can actually make yourself quite unwell by being in the wrong position, the wrong job, or in the wrong environment of a job that's not good for you.
Yeah.
If it's a leader can actually cripple people by doing that, keeping them in fear. They can also control them because they use the bluff, or they'll go to higher authority and they'll question the person's credibility, or they'll make the job uncomfortable, or they'll be careful who they hire, that they hire people to manipulate, or they keep people under control. All of that is a fear mechanism. So the thing is some leaders have got great education and that it looks very sophisticated, but in the end I still think they're all frillies.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was, like we were saying, frillies, yeah. And it's a perfect analogy because I even do that, I reckon. Like, when I'm stumped on something, I would go through that process myself. And I do it with Dan when we're talking about stuff. I definitely do that. You know what I mean? I feel that happens with me for sure.
Well, I mean,
without really knowing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just the route. Like it doesn't happen often. It's just like when there's an argument or something like that. That is definitely how I.
Yeah. And you try and use the bluff to get it to go away.
Yeah,
or
definitely.
to manipulate them, or to change the circumstances, or, try and anticipate what they're doing, or look, I haven't got time, or too many emails.
So that's interesting because not many people who would do that have the ability to identify that they do that. Or no,
but I just think I haven't heard it explained like that.
Yeah, no, I know.
But as in like that is a thing.
Well, for decades I've been using the explanation because most people who have been in that situation, either a leader or someone that's in an environment where they're being treated that way, or they're so fearful they're reacting to others. So there is two sides to this really story. One is the person that's really been hurt or damaged, and so they're responding for survival mechanisms. Then there are those people, whether they're a leader or whether they're what we call a white ant, actually in the business, and they're sorry,
Chewing the timber.
Yeah.
They're sort of chewing the foundations.
Yeah.
Everything looks fine, but really their own security is making sure that that the leader doubts other people.